There's Tim. Oh no.
It does say live on Facebook in the corner.
Does it? Okay. I just want to verify that it's up before we get started. Yeah. Okay. I think we're good.
Good to go?
Yeah, I believe so. Greg, if you want to get started.
All right, I'd like to call the March 25th meeting of the Public Utilities Commission to order. Roll call. I'm looking at participants. I think we have everybody here. Brad, I see you're there. Thanks for joining us. And I guess even though we're kind of separate here and all standing in our own spots, I'd like to start with a Pledge of Allegiance like we always do. I'll start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. First call to order will be approval of minutes from last month.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the February 26th meeting.
I hear a second.
Just a note, I wasn't in attendance of that meeting. So I will second that with, just make that note that I was absent.
Thank you, Dan. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, that motion will be carried. This is secondly then is the public comment section. Period of time when anybody that's out there can have an opportunity to speak up. Give them 3 minutes or something is what we've always limited them to in the past. If anybody is linked in that would like to make a comment, this would be an appropriate time. Also, we asked when the announcement went out on Facebook and the bulletin board about this meeting being broadcast like this, there was an opportunity for people to submit questions or comments through info@princetonutilities.com. So Keith or Kathy, have we had anything come in on that?
I did not receive anything.
Okay.
I have not either.
Okay. Point 4, approval of the agenda. I'd like to make an addition to the agenda as it is under new business. Make it point H, Mayor Schumacher. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Say opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 5, approval of the accounts payable. Under your report section. Any questions or concerns on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the accounts payable.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor or all the opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Greg, if I may interrupt for just a second, I've been scanning through the packets as we get to the individual items. Have folks been seeing those?
Yes,
Okay, I just want to make sure that those are available on video for any member of the public that is watching along with us or at a later date. Thank you.
Anything else, Keith?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Reports and correspondence. Keith, why don't you take it from there on the SIMPA board meetings and so forth?
Yes, sir. The SIMPA board meeting was held on March 11th. Unfortunately, it has been a very hectic month for us, so I was unable to attend. However, I did include in your packets the monthly update on the SIMPA key metrics, which includes information on plant operations, solar production, as well as various financial performance metrics for the agency. You will also see at the bottom right additional metrics regarding the performance, and this is on an agency-wide basis, not for Princeton, but for the entire membership, on their energy efficiency, energy savings metric, as well as just some other little factoids, just so that people understand what the agency is working on and the value that they're bringing to their membership. Next, anyway, I don't have anything else on the SIMPA board meeting. The minutes I don't have yet from March 11th. SIMPA is continuing forward with their rebranding with their logo that you've seen, as well as their SIMPA 2.0 efforts, which we talked about last month as well. Other than that, I guess I don't have anything else to report on SIMPA.
Okay. Electric department updates.
Yeah, a couple things I want to mention. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on these just yet because later on under new business, we do have our COVID-19 response. So I'll go through more details there. A couple things I want to mention real quick is around the generation plant, we have removed some rock around the transformers as part of the recommendations that we have under our spill containment plan to make sure we have the proper volume there should a transformer ever leak. We're going to be adding grates at a later date just for some safety purposes. On the distribution side, we've been implementing some LED upgrades that we need to catch up on and finishing up a lot of the tree trimming activities as well. And then for the water department as well as through the electric department, just getting staff acclimated to the new environment that we're working in, just making sure we're keeping up with paperwork and inventories and cleaning to keep the facilities operating at top-notch condition.
Okay. City of Princeton update. Bob, this is generally where you jump in. Are you there, Bob?
All right, I'm here. Sorry, I had it on mute.
Hi.
Thank you for your patience.
Nope,
Just a
no worries.
couple of things. Had a development review meeting and both city and PUC staff met and we talked about a golf course clubhouse. We talked about a plat on West Birch Road, a proposed development a little bit to the west where the intersection is planned for at I-90, or I'm sorry, at 94 or with 95, excuse me. And a couple other things too, I can't recall off the top of my head. The city has taken steps to, with COVID-19, we've taken steps to separate workspaces and times for all employees in all the departments. It's a little bit more difficult than the liquor store, but we have done that and everybody's working full time. So those are the main items, I believe.
Okay. That it? Keith,
Yes.
is there anything else under general manager's report that you want to include?
Yes, there is a couple of items just for the commission's information. In regards to the thoughts that we had was to slat that fence similar to what we have done with the storage area on the south side of our facility. We actually went ahead and got a quote to slat that fence would be about $3,000. And that quote came from Bamboom Fence in St. Cloud. Excuse me. And that would end, like I said, that would just end up looking like our storage area on the south of the line cruise shop. The business expo that we were planning to participate in.
Keith, maybe now would be an appropriate time for me to make comment regarding the conditional use permit.
Oh, yes, please, Bob, go ahead.
So regarding the permit, I haven't been able to take the time to dig in the old records to find it, but the transformers that were allowed were those related and connected to the substation, not the storage of the additional ones there. And I do believe there's still quite a few stored there. And if you were going to store them there, you'd need to apply for an additional permit to store those there. It wouldn't be just a matter of the commission taking a step to do what they felt was appropriate. It's a matter of what the planning commission feels is appropriate after the permit would be issued. So I wanted to make that clear, and I just haven't had the chance to pull out the information for it. The permit is one thing, but it has the information is what you're looking for, and that's what I don't have handy. So.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then, the business expo, which was planned for Saturday, April 4th, has been canceled. So obviously we won't have a booth there for that. The other items that I have are further down on the agenda, which I'll talk about each of those in turn, unless anybody on the commission has any questions for me.
Okay. Under unfinished business, AMI conversion update.
Yes, we have currently installed 475 electric meters and 125 water meters. We have suspended all AMI installations indefinitely as we navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. But once we feel comfortable and we get through some of the stuff, then we'll start implementing those conversions again.
Keith, let me ask a question. When we do a conversion, are we trying to do both the water and the electric at the same time? Is that part of the program, or can we do one, not the other? Or?
We typically like to do the electrics first because the water meters communicate to the AMI system via the electric meters typically, or our load control devices, which we have as well. The electric meters, because they're on outside of buildings, are pretty easy to convert. The water meters, which are typically in basements, requires building access, and so that tends to be a little bit slower. So what you'll see is we have the electric staff going through and doing a route and taking care of all that, and then the water conversions follow along behind it as scheduling allows.
Okay, so it would be. I wonder if we could go ahead and continue with the electric ones while we're waiting for things to change, or do you feel that there's an issue with doing it separately like that?
I do agree that it's going to be easier to start up the electric meters first, given that the water meters require, like I said, access to the building and more interaction with the public. Those we might delay a little bit longer. At the moment, we are receiving our shipments of AMI meters on a quarterly basis, and we had used up everything in inventory. I think we just got or will just now get our next shipment of electric meters and get those set up anyway. So the timing actually ended up being really good for us. We were in a little bit of a lull as it was. Once we get adjusted to this, this new norm with our staff allocations, then I could see us restarting that program once we feel comfortable in knowing how we want to move forward with it. But at the moment, we just have paused it as we kind of make sure we have everything right. Organized.
Okay, good. The electric vehicle host program.
Yes, we have provided contracts to 2 potential sites. I know one of those sites does want to have a discussion with us about the exact location. They have some thoughts as well. And the last conversations were before the emergency declarations at the state level and local level. So we'll get back to that as we have time and our customers and those potential sites have times. So I expect both of those to continue to move forward. Those are our 2 level 2 chargers. As far as the DC fast charger, that was put on hold for a little bit as we figured out more of what the equipment costs were, as well as the infrastructure needed to properly maintain that system. Unfortunately, there are no 3-phase 480 volt transformers in the downtown area, which is where we had been striving to put that. If we were to set up to do that, that would be an additional $6,000 to $7,000 in added cost, as well as creating a much bigger footprint. At this time, we weren't. That was getting a little too high for what the utility would be able to cover on its own. What we have done is we have reached out to one of the private lots where there is a 3-phase 480 volt transformer nearby. We're waiting to hear back from them to see if they would be interested in hosting. If they are, we'll continue to see if we can negotiate something with them. If not, we'll go back to the drawing board on the DC fast charger and see what we can do while still keeping the cost down to what we have approval for.
Okay. Thank you for that. Water main realignment project with bid in. Discuss
Yes.
that a little bit.
I do. And what I put in, so I didn't receive these in time to review and get those in your packets for today. I emailed those out afterwards, and you should see the letter on your screen as well. And I can make this available to anybody that wants to get an actual copy of the PDF. This is in regards to the realignment project on 5th Street and Highway 95. To give some background, this project was bid out back at the end of 2018. At that time, the engineer's estimate was that the project would cost approximately $88,000. However, the bids came in and the lowest bid was $112,000, which was significantly higher than what my predecessor, as well as the commission at that time, was comfortable in paying for that work. So we went out for bid again this year on that, giving contractors the ability to fit that in where it made sense for them, hoping that it would result in a more favorable bid for us. And as a result, what you'll see as I scan down here is a couple of things. C&L Excavating ended up with the lowest bid. One of the things that we did, before you look at the numbers there, let me just kind of explain what we had done with this project. We bid out the realignment exactly the same way, but given that we were going to be doing some work on the mains, we did want to try to take the opportunity to see if it made sense to do some additional fire protection on the north side of town. Our estimate was that to add in a few hydrants so that if anything happened, we wouldn't have to run, the fire department, I should say, wouldn't have to have a fire hose going across Highway 95, that we could add in some hydrants at minimal cost. And we were estimating that cost to be around $20,000 to $25,000. The bids came back and we were seeing pricing on the order of $51,000 plus. And to us, that's just not a cost-effective way of adding in that added fire protection. We can add in those hydrants ourselves over time at a much lower cost than that. So the proposal that is under the bid process is to accept the bid, but the contractor, the lowest bid contractor, C&L Excavating, has agreed that we could do a modification afterwards to remove that extra fire protection and subtract $51,000 from the bid. What that does is it brings us to a bid for just the realignment activity at $89,542.50. So by delaying the project from 2018 to now and doing the bidding at the beginning of the construction season rather than the ending of the construction season, the prior commission has saved the ratepayers on the order of $23,000. So we felt that was a really good deal. Now, this does bring up a couple of questions. One is we do, we are operating under a different environment than what we anticipated when we put out the bid. I expect, and I can go through this in more detail too under the COVID-19 stuff. I think it's fair to assume that we will probably see our collections decrease over the next few months. Unfortunately, we are experiencing folks that are out of work, businesses that are either closed or reducing at partial operations. My anticipation is what that will do is probably reduce our on-time bill payments from what they are in a normal month. So this project is not an emergency project. It was something that we wanted to do to relocate where the water is flowing at that intersection. On the other thing, though, I should mention too is we do have a good, healthy cash reserve balance on the water side. So I think we would be able to fund the project and move forward with it and keep the economy going as best as we can help with. And so I think what I'm looking for from the commission is your thoughts on that. If you agree with me, we can do an acceptance of the CNL excavating as the lowest bid project for this realignment. And then we will work with them on the timing as well as doing a change order to remove the $51,000 for the added fire protection that we've decided to forego in this situation. Is there any questions I can answer at this time? Tim.
Keith, question for you. How different is an engineer's opinion of cost versus an engineer's cost estimate? And could you just explain why that gets put in?
Typically, during a bid process, this was done through WSB. They will go through and come up with their estimate for what they think the project would be. And then when the bids come back, it's a good metric for us to see if do we think that the bids are within typical industry standards, or could there be some sort of premium being added on that we weren't aware of? It was more to give us an idea of where a way to compare the bids to each other and make sure that we're getting some value for what we're doing. Like I said, when we originally went out ourselves, and this was before we had the engineer's opinion of cost, we did not expect the added fire protection to be on the order of $50,000. So that surprised us, and that's why we're looking at removing that section and just focusing this project on the actual realignment of the water mains.
Keith, you want to mention just who WSB is for those people that are watching and maybe aren't familiar with that?
Yeah, WSB is an engineering firm that we use, that they handle kind of the bid process for us, and they tabulate the results and then report back with their recommendation, which you see in this letter, as to who would be best suited to perform the project.
Yeah, this is an engineering firm that has expertise in this particular area of city work, right?
Correct, and the city uses them as well.
Okay. Okay. Any comments about delaying it or going forward?
Yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, it was Mindy, but I'm really torn on this because it's something we've been working on for so long, and it's something we know we need to do to get it out of where it is. But also, again, with the current situation, I'm a little uneasy of spending $90,000 we don't need to spend right at the moment.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of went through while you were talking, Keith, is our cash reserves on the water side are in pretty good shape. Do we have an idea, or I don't recall discussing it? No, I should say I recall discussing it, and I don't recall the numbers. How many days of cash on hand do we have in the water department?
Yes, to answer your question directly, if you looked at days of cash on hand, we're sitting at about 578 days because we have around $880,000 if I'm looking at what we finished off at the end of December with for last year's numbers. What I would caution though is when you're dealing with water, because once you build the well, you're really pumping the water for free. You have pretty low revenues, even though your capital expenditures over time can be as significant as on the electric side. If it's not uncommon for us, we have to do a water main project that we could be looking at a $250,000 expenditure here or $500,000 there. And in fact, we have a couple of big projects coming up in the next couple of years on the order of $500,000. One is looking at the water tower repaint, both the inside and outside, as well as a major water main relocation that's going to happen for a county project that we're anticipating. That being said, so I get when you have a highly capital intensive industry with relatively lower revenues, you want to be a little careful about looking at just the days of cash on hand. Because it can skew the data a little bit, but I do feel comfortable that we have the cash on hand to be able to fund this project and still be able to weather, I think a drop in the collections so that we can help our customers as we get through this emergency event. That's the whole reason why my predecessor had reduced the water rates 4% last year was because of that as well. So I am concerned. I share Mindy's concern. I want to be careful with this as well. However, I think from the numbers that I'm looking at, I believe that we would be okay and still be able to weather a downturn on a project like this. Obviously, if we're looking at a drop in collections over multiple months, then we're dealing with a different issue at that time. But if we're looking at something, over the next couple of months, I think we'll be okay. I don't see anything that's really jumping out at me that it would cause a problem. The other issue that we want to be aware of is the contractor, like I said, bid it at the price that they did because they would be able to fit it in when it was convenient for them, and that time is now. If we don't approve this project, they have said that they may need to withdraw their bid, which means that the next lowest bid in the tabulation was at $102,000 approximately. So if we don't approve this project and the contractor does withdraw it and we go to the second lowest, we're going to be paying an additional $12,000 for the same work. So there is the contractor has voiced some concern with the timing and wanting to move forward on it quickly. If we think that the risk is low, we'll see it'll save us $12,000. However, if we feel the risk is too high and we postpone this and they do pull their bid and we go with the next lowest one, there will be an increase in the project cost. Just so everybody's fully aware of what we're looking at.
Thank you.
So if this is a prolonged slowdown in the economy and we do notice things happening that are unforeseen as far as revenues, is it possible to, on the bigger projects like the $500,000 water tower project, is it possible that we could maybe push those out a few months in the future?
For the water tower project, my guess is yes. as far as the county water main relocation, which could happen next year, the latest indication we have is it will be a 2022 activity. That one we're under the county schedule, so it's all dependent upon when the county wants to do it. So I don't have any control over that one.
This county relocation project, which project are you referencing there? And then also the other question I have is, we discussed, and I mentioned earlier that the golf course clubhouse is being considered, and in that particular area, you're looking at putting in a loop, which would have a cost. Have you taken those costs into consideration, and or at least a rough estimate of what it would cost you to loop the clubhouse water that you're proposed to do?
No, we do not have any costs at this time for adding in that looping around the golf course just yet. I don't have those in front of me. As far as the water main relocation project, that is that 7th Avenue project that we've discussed through the county.
You bet. Thank you. The only thing I would mention to the commission is I think that it's to everybody's desire to encourage and cooperate with new development. So that loop that may be timed with that golf course clubhouse would be something you'd want to, I think, have availability. And there could be other projects as well that would be future development.
Yeah, if I can, just to give the commission some information on that, with the proposal for a brew pub at the golf course, they were going to be coming off of a water main to the west of that location. We actually also have a water main coming in from the north that terminates before that parcel. It is, I think, the longest dead end that we have in the city. And so it would be really beneficial for us to be able to connect those two, create some looping, which would also help when we flush in the spring and fall and keep the water mains clear. So we're looking at a couple of different options to use as part of that development project to help with our own infrastructure and make it more robust and reliable by creating 2 ways to feed that residential community that is north of that location. But we don't have a cost yet for adding in that additional water main.
Okay. I guess, at this point, I'm wondering, I'm speaking mostly to Dan and Mindy. My concern about, I'd like to go forward with it, but my concern is having CNL pull out, and then we're looking at a delay in addition to going to the secondary contractor, who might say, yeah, but I've got the same problem that CNL had, and if you're going to postpone this from June to August or something, then I've got to rebid it myself. That we're kind of in a danged if you do, danged if you don't kind of a situation in this particular scenario, and frankly, I'm concerned that the economic conditions that we're facing here are not going to improve dramatically in the next 2 months. That's a gut feeling more than anything, but that's kind of where I'm at, and the reading I've done about this it hasn't been particularly helpful, to be honest. So if you guys have any feelings one direction or another, I'd be happy to hear about it.
Well, obviously this is a time to make some tough decisions. I'm torn between, adding to the problem by pulling back contracts and work that was planned to be done, and being careful for what might come in the future. But, I guess we the water department does have a healthy reserve account. If it, unlike, the electric reserve is lower than we'd like, but I think with the water department reserve being in good shape, I think maybe we should do our part a little bit to help the economy keep moving, especially with a reduced rate estimate.
Well, that's why I asked the question about the water reserve earlier. I had it in my head that the water reserve was in better shape than the electric side of the electric side. I'm afraid we're woefully inadequate, but the water side, I think we've got the reserves there, and maybe this is the time to use them. Mindy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was reserved, but again, this is something we pushed off for a couple of years just because other projects have come in front of it that we needed to put some urgency to. So I guess I'm on the same page at this point, that to keep the cost saving measures, the fact that we could go back out to bid or have it rebid and go up exponentially, I'm thinking we should go ahead with the project.
Keith, go ahead, Dan.
It's also possible that $20,000 savings, might recoup some of the losses of revenue from people, being affected by this COVID-19 in the long run. So if we're going to be forward thinking a little bit, I guess I would maybe recommend that we go ahead with this project.
Yeah. Keith, are you needing something in terms of a motion from us to get approved to do this, or what do you need?
Yes, I do need the commission to make a motion to accept CNL Excavating as the lowest bid project for the Fifth Street water main realignment, and that the fire protection, that we are not recommending that work for the added fire protection be completed at this time, thereby reducing the overall bid by approximately $51,000. So the original motion does need to accept the bids as filed at $142,465, but we will adjust that afterwards.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to accept the CNL bid for the $142,465 minus the $51,000 for the fire protection that we will not be going forward with at this time.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
And I just want to reiterate, and just to be clear, the added fire protection we will continue to move forward with as time and resources permit. It's just that we feel that we will be able to spread those costs out over a longer period of time and do it at a cheaper price than what was included in the bid document. So it's not that we're saying we don't need that, that wouldn't provide value to the infrastructure. It's just we're not going to include it as part of this bid.
I just have one question. I wasn't able to get it unmuted before the motion was voted on. And that is, do you still meet the state requirement to have a fire hydrant with every, I think it's 600 feet of water main?
For this section, and actually, Scott, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so as far as the realignment part of this is concerned, we're looking at adding one hydrant in that area, in that section, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So that means we're in compliance. The added fire protection that we are talking about is in different areas north of that location.
That's a couple blocks north of what this project was. We meet the criteria for this project.
So what we were doing was, since we were going to be there doing the work anyway and shutting things down, we were taking that opportunity to improve stuff north of this location. As for the itself, yes, we meet all the requirements.
Anything else, Bob?
No, that's it.
Bob, your handsome face doesn't show up. You've blocked yourself there. There you go. Good to see your smiling face. Okay, moving on to new business. Keith, do you want to speak a little bit about the COVID-19 response that we're doing?
Absolutely. And I have sent out information to the commission as well as the city council, informing everyone of the steps that we have taken to address the coronavirus pandemic. What we have done and the way we are currently operating is that the Princeton Public Utilities staff has been split into two groups and have been working independently from each other. Group one is working 1 week, and then they will be at home the next week, and then group two is on a flip schedule. Each group is comprised of one power plant technician, one water operator, 2 or 3 linemen, depending upon which group we're referring to, an office person, as well as one superintendent. Each superintendent and each on-call person have been required to take utility vehicles home to ensure access should should the situation worsen. And we are continuing with our cleaning regimen to ensure that our facilities are clean and help mitigate any potential spread of infection. This is especially important on Fridays between those shift changes. We have also started providing staff a litany of tasks and items for them to be worked on remotely. Since they, even though that they are at home, we are keeping them busy on utility business activities, and they are checking in with their supervisors on a daily basis. All of our staff, whether they're working in the office or at home, are required to remain on call. In other words, we did that because if the emergency worsens or if there are other concerns or incidents affecting the safety and reliability of the system, we can enforce an all hands on deck order at my discretion to pull the team together quickly. We have also been in contact with other water and electric utilities should the need for mutual aid be required. If mutual aid is requested or responded to, our staff or the staff assisting us will be required to wear the appropriate PPE, personal protection equipment, to minimize the risk of infection. The other activity we have done, as you've seen here today, is providing a means for the commission meeting to occur through a video conferencing system and still allowing the public to participate and see the activities that the utility is doing on an ongoing basis. We are remaining in contact with various entities, and we will adjust our response as necessary. I have also provided contact information for myself as well as the superintendents to various departments, organizations, and different groups, so that if anything happens, we can keep the communication going. I do feel that that's the most important thing, is to, in an event like this, is to make sure folks are talking to each other. So that's what we've implemented at the utility.
Bob, just a question, does this pretty much align with what the city is doing?
Bob, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Okay, so now I'm unmuted. I'm not real sure. We have everybody that is separated as far as shifts and days, and then we spread the shifts out or the days out longer. Everybody's working their 40 hours. Some of it is remote, but they're still required to work 40 hours. I'm not sure if, Keith, you weren't real clear as to whether they're working 40 hours when they're off duty or when they're
Yes, they are.
home.
They
Pardon?
are. Yes. They are still working. Yes.
So they are working their 80 hours. There was a little bit of misinformation out there about that then perhaps. So then it sounds like there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, good, excellent.
Tim.
Bob, you just said there's a misinformation out there. Where is it coming from?
From staff.
Anything else? Going to go ahead and talk, Keith, about IT services, what we're doing there?
Yes, we are going through a little bit of a transition with our IT specialist who will be retiring next month. And I have begun, I reached out to various IT managed services firms, more specifically 4 of them, to solicit bids on handling our IT needs. My experience is that for most smaller organizations, they typically rely on an outside firm to handle the needed IT support and troubleshooting. Of those four, one never responded to my initial inquiry. Another one I talked to several times, but then afterwards, I didn't hear from them again. And then a third seemed to be a much higher scale IT strategy development with a very significant high just consultation fees. So what I ended up doing was selecting the fourth company that I had talked to, which is CW Technology. And so far they've been great to work with. They've answered all my questions. They have a lot of experience working with municipal utilities specifically. They included a couple of references in their proposal of municipal utilities that they have done. And even so, based on their utility experience, they would have been my heavy favorite anyway. Given everything that we're looking at with the pandemic and how that has affected our staffing and operations, we went ahead and started bringing them on board and having them evaluate our IT systems. The contract that is set up with them does have a 60-day cancellation notice, so I can cancel it at any time. And once we get through all this and get set up, we can always rebid the project at that time if it was deemed necessary. So the cost for them to do full remote and on-site support for all of our covered servers and workstations was $1,450 per month. That obviously will increase as I get more and more staff using workstations and using more computer tools. But however, as you can see, a cost of under $1,500 per month is significantly less than what we would have to pay for a full-time IT person in today's job market. Many of those IT duties beyond just system support, which includes our GIS and our AMI metering information, has been shifted to other personnel. Once we complete that transition, I do believe we'll be more nimble and operate more efficiently at a lower cost. So CW Technology, what I'd like, I think it would be prudent to just have a motion to hire CW Technology as our IT managed services firm and allow me to continue to work with them and to up and modernize our internal IT systems.
Before we go too far, I want to just, I know we've got Mr. Bergman scheduled for a retirement towards the end of April. I'm just wondering if it might help with the transition if we could drag him out a little bit, help ITW get familiar with all of our, because it's a peculiar kind of things. We have AMI and GIS and the telephone services and everything else that he emails and whatnot that he works with. If it wouldn't be helpful to string him out a little bit longer. I know, he's got that April 20th date in mind, but I'm all in favor of having the ITW folks come forward. I'm just wondering if we can maybe save ourselves some grease if we have a little bit more transition time with Mr. Bergman there.
I do think we do have options, and I will continue to evaluate those as time, as we learn more over time to see what makes sense for us. Long term, I do feel that CW Technology will be able to help us get there in meeting our IT support needs.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept TW Technology.
Okay.
I just want to say, Keith, I appreciate the work you put into this, and I believe that over the years we'll save a considerable amount by having an outside sourced IT, and anything we can do to save the ratepayer some money is what I'm for. So I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Dan. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, moving on to the new logo and website. Keith, want to share some of that stuff with us?
Yeah, to provide some background background for folks that might not have been in attendance at our last meetings and understood that one of the things that we have been doing is updating our website. We want to make it more modern, also make it available on mobile devices much easier than it is now, and really just kind of give a refresh for the look and how we interact with our customers as more and more people go online. The current website served us well over the years, but websites are also one of those things that you do want to look at on a regular basis and continue to stay relevant for the times. So we had started working on that. One of the recommendations that came from our developer was that our logo was feeling a little dated. We wanted to do a refresh on that as well. And let's see if I can do this. I'm going to stop a share here and I'll show you the new logo that we're going to be using. As you can see, can everybody see that? Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yep.
So what you see is we're keeping with the same theme for the community. There's been a lot of work on branding that, both in terms of the colors as well as the sun and the trees and the water theme. It's used by the city and it's used by the chamber in different formats. What we wanted though was something also that spoke to the public utilities, which is the water tower, as well as some distribution lines to just show that we're providing the electricity and the water for the community. And so it harkens to our rural roots. And then the two different blue lines that you see under it are meant to symbolize the confluence of the West Branch and Rum Rivers, those coming together in the city of Princeton. So we went back and forth with a lot of folks. The commission had input on all this and staff as well as others. And this is the logo that we came up with. That then will be used on our new website. And I'm going to see if I've got that. I'm going to give you a quick little demo of what the new website is looking like. The plan is that the new website will go live on Monday. We are still working on some of the content. And so it is going to be a work in progress. And let me do this. Can everybody see the website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So what you see is this is designed to work on both a desktop, laptop, as well as on phones. So it's got different sections that you can click on. You can scroll down. It's got easier ways for me to update information on the fly. And as we scan down, we'll have our standard contact information, after hours, emergency numbers. We've got our Facebook links on there. Under the commission, we have information that will include our agendas and our minutes. And then eventually, as we are seeing today, I'll be able to archive the videos here as well. We also have the opportunity to provide background. Let me move, let's see, this here. For example, I'll pull up the history real quick, just so you can kind of see some of the different formatting that we can do, but just kind of go through so we can recognize our history and how we got to where we are today. And then there will be more and more opportunities to pay your bill online, to apply for services. We even put in a section here for reporting if a street light is out, so folks can interact with us more, and we can make sure that the entire system is being maintained, and continue to provide even more background for folks. For example, if I click on the electric webpage, you'll see information on how to obtain a permit, what our rates are, our staff, and the different work that we have done in the community, some action photos, just so people get a better understanding of what it is we do on a daily basis. So I had that for both electric and water. And it's a way for us just to, like I said, just to communicate more and have that information available to customers as they want to access it. Any questions on that?
At some point, do we envision customers being able to get in and track their billing through this and say, okay, last 2 months ago it was this, and last month it was this, and now all of a sudden it's this? They should be able to see the kind of a graphing of their usage or that kind of thing going into here anymore?
Yeah, yes, we currently have that under the paying the bill online, as well as billing and services. It taps into our Enterlite service, which does provide some of that historical analysis on a month-by-month basis. I am hopeful as we convert more and more to our AMI system that we will have more real-time data that we can share that way. What we have done in setting up this website is worked very closely with the developer to create the infrastructure that we need and can build upon. So there's a lot of stuff here that I think will set us up for additional features in the coming years.
Okay. Looks good. I like it. Any other comments or?
No, I think it looks good also.
Well, I like it. It's very easy to use. It's self-explanatory, so.
So I will ask, like I said, oh, go ahead, Tim.
Keith, could you please figure out a way to get a screenshot of the home page as a graphic and send it to me? And then when you're going to get your launch time set, let me know so I could coordinate a post on this.
Yeah.
We ought to be able to do that that should be pretty straightforward, I would think, Keith.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Like I said, our launch date is for Monday. We'll have this up. There's a couple areas that might not be populated. You'll see a coming soon on them, but I do want to get this switched over as soon as possible so that I can start updating it on a regular basis and in real time.
Okay, I think this is the perfect opportunity to make this smooth segue here into recording and archiving of public meetings.
Yeah, it's going to make all that a lot easier for us. All right, where are we at next? Oh, and yeah, that brings us to the recording and archiving thing. Thanks, Greg. I was busy switching back and forth. So my point in this section is, we have experienced over the last year or so some intermittent recording of PUC meetings, and I do feel that it is important for us as the commission to record and archive as well as own those videos to make sure that they're always available to the public. And I feel like that just needs to be done by us so that we can maintain that properly. I had planned on addressing this issue over the next 6 to 12 months. However, with with COVID-19 and all the issues that we've been dealing with, we've accelerated that to address it over the last 6 to 12 days to get us there. And what you're seeing today is a result of that effort. And I want to continue that going forward. So even after we get through all of this and life gets back to normal, I do think it's important for us to continue going forward with using the technology that we have available to us and making stuff available to assist in letting the public understand what it is that the commission does and promote transparency, as well as continuing to to promote civic engagement and involvement in their utilities. That's what a municipal utility is all about. So that's the direction that I'm going. I know I've had conversation with folks, and there's been a lot of support for us continuing down that path. And I do want to focus to make sure that we're recording everything so that it's all on the record and available to the public.
What do you need? I think this is as it turns out, this is our first meeting that we have recorded on our own. We've had Andrea has Miss Gerard has done some recording in the past, but as you say, it's been kind of sporadic. And I think more and more we're seeing people interested, and even if they don't do it live, they've been able to go back out there on her bulletin board and look at those things. I think it's incumbent on us to have that codified so that it's our meetings, we record them, and if they want to go watch the video of today's meeting 6 months from now, where we talked about this, they should be able to click on some link on our website and say, okay, here's the videos, and be able to watch them at whatever point in history. I don't know what you need in terms of motions and so forth to go forward, but I would certainly say this is the direction that the Public Utilities Commission ought to be heading. And I think we couldn't start any sooner than today. So,
well, if I may suggest, Greg, just as last year when issues have come up where we implemented a cash reserve policy and a conflict of interest policy and various other items just to make it clear as to how we want to operate. If the commission wishes, they can direct me to now create a video recording and archiving policy so that we, like you said, codify this so that going forward, it is just how it's part of our normal way of operating. I'm happy to do that if the commission would like to have something formal in place.
I guess I would rather see it, controlled, through the commission. I guess I noticed that, like, when they're recording, like, the city council meetings, it seems like it's possible that there's sometimes outside influencers that are dictating which meetings are recorded and which ones aren't. And I think in the spirit of transparency and consistency that we should just have it in-house, that it's recorded on a regular basis.
Mindy, any thoughts?
No, I'm for this. We all want to thank Andrea. She's done a great job, but I know she also does go to school. I think Wednesdays are one of her school days. So that's why I think our meetings have been hit or miss, because she does have a life outside of just doing this, as it's not her full-time job. So I think it's a good idea that it's something we take in-house to make sure that it gets done every meeting.
Well, I guess my feelings are we are the commission, and we are the ones that are responsible for our behavior, and we ought to be documenting what we do on a regular basis for everyone to see. So I'd like to entertain a motion to make this a directive to Keith to pursue this. I don't know exactly what the language of that should be, but I'm sure we can come up with something.
So I'll make the motion to direct Keith to start the process of recording and archiving all of the PUC meetings going forward. Or to make policy, I guess I should say.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion is carried, 3-0. 8E, Echo, Resolution 20-03.
Yeah, so before you is a resolution regarding the discontinuation of the Princeton Public Utilities payment in lieu of taxes. The reason this has come up has been there have been several questions raised over the last year, and as we further investigated it, some different facts have come to light. And in addition, we find ourselves in a situation under the current emergency declaration and with some uncertainty in front of us as to how that's going to impact the local economy and how we need to preserve the ability for us to continue to provide reliable electricity and clean water to the community. So there's a couple of points in here that I want to mention as I've looked into the pilot. And these are things that have been kind of mentioned over the last several months. This just kind of puts it in writing. The one is to point out that the city of Princeton has already vested itself with the power to implement and establish a franchise upon the ratepayers of Princeton, giving it a mechanism to collect any funds as it deems necessary. And from my investigations, I attended a utility finance conference at the end of last year. And according to my research, I've not been able to find another utility in the country whose ratepayers are contributing to city operations through both a pilot and a franchise fee. We are also at Princeton Public Utilities continuing to work on developing guidelines for a cash reserve policy, which includes, among other things, the maintenance of an adequate cash reserve, a rate stabilization account, and bond coverages. And as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, on the electric side, the Commission does desire to have a higher cash reserve than we currently have on the our electric account. That Princeton Public Utilities Commission desires to minimize future rate increases upon its ratepayers by reducing costs wherever possible, and also believing that the public has a right to have transparency on how funds are collected by the city and how they are used, which is best accomplished through the existing franchise fee structure. So the resolution in front of you is to discontinue the pilot contribution through the city of Princeton. We don't believe that it puts the city at any severe disadvantage, since they do have the franchise fee to their availability, and it avoids the duplication of city funding resources by contributing through a franchise fee and a pilot, and will allow the Princeton Public Utilities to continue to build its cash reserve to meet common industry standards. And with that, I'll hand it back to the Commission.
This is a subject that has come up in discussions kind of on the side, more or less, when we were discussing what our cash reserves should be and what has been established as minimum standards for our cash reserves to protect ourselves in difficult times, shall I say. One of the things that came up a couple meetings ago was that although our reserves on the water side seemed to be adequate, we were woefully inadequate. We had less than 90 days of reserves on the electric side, when what was being recommended was 180 days, 6 months of operating expenses. Given the nature of cataclysmic things, we don't know how to protect them. In addition to which, if we lose something like a transformer, if we lose a generator, replacing those things are extremely expensive, and we're not currently in a position to deal with that without going to a bonding. And I think bonding, as everybody is aware, is an expensive and difficult proposal, particularly in times like these. The fact that we have an unusual emergency situation in our midst just makes this whole thing that much more complicated, but more important for us to deal with. I think it's important for us to get our cash reserves in line to protect the Commission, to protect the utility, and in effect, really, to protect our ratepayers from catastrophic increases in rates. And with that, I'll open it to anybody else that wants to make a comment.
If I could, I'd like to speak for a minute.
Please.
Okay. I just want to make it clear that the franchise fee that was put in place, I believe it was back when the previous mayor was in place. It's $1.50 a month for residents, $2.50 a month for small businesses, and $55 a month for a large business or industry. So for the ratepayers, the general public, the residents that you're speaking about, the $1.50 a month, which comes out to be about $18 a year, is collected, and that is only used for our parks and trail system, and it does not go into the general fund. The PUC payment in lieu of taxes, which I believe has only been raised one time in the last 40 years. The last time was 2007, which was 13 years ago. The payment in lieu of taxes does go into the city's general fund, which is used to pay for streets, sewers, fire, police, those kinds of things. So I have to say I'm surprised that this is the avenue that you're choosing to take to cut expenses. And also I'll just end it with, I'm curious to see how the board is going to vote and decide if they're willing to take the chance on how the city and the people will respond to this.
If I may, just a couple of quick items. The pilot dollar amount has stayed consistent through that. I would point out, though, that that dollar amount was also in place when Princeton Public Utilities was also in charge of garbage collection. And when Princeton Public Utilities got out of the garbage collection side of the industry, the pilot was not reduced at that time, but did remain the same. So even though the dollar amount didn't change, there was a significant change at the utility, but the utility did not make an adjustment downwards to account for that reduction in an operating revenue standpoint. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
Keith, could you tell me how much is the city collecting from the ratepayers on a monthly basis for the in lieu of tax payment, or not for the franchise fee, I should say.
Franchise fee.
What I have is in January is about $6,500 for the month of January from us. The franchise fee is implemented on every electric utility in serving within city limits. So there are also collections being done through Connexus as well as East Central. And then I believe the natural gas utility is also collecting a franchise fee on behalf of the city.
And just to be clear, you said we are the only city in the state of Minnesota that you know of that's paying both?
It's the only one I know of. If anybody knows of another one, I'd like to see it, but I don't know of anybody. Usually what you see when you have a municipal utility is there's no need for a franchise fee. It is handled through a pilot mechanism. When I was at the National Utility Conference last fall, and we were talking about how we track finances and account for different mechanisms, and we were talking about pilots, I raised my hand and asked, how do you handle it when you're doing both a pilot and a franchise fee? And everybody in the room was looked at me and was surprised that we actually are doing both. So, and that was a national, it's not a statistical sample, but it was a national group of municipal utilities that were there that was not familiar with that as well.
Keith, I'm confused on how you worded that, because the PUC is not paying a franchise fee to the city. The city asked, since you do the monthly billing, the city asked for the PUC to collect for the city $1.50 per resident per month.
Correct.
Franchise fee to go into our park fund.
Right, which is collected from, but my point is, when you're looking at it from a ratepayer perspective, it is the ratepayers that are paying both the franchise fee and the pilot. I mean, the pilot is collected through revenues. Yes, it's, the utility's paying for it, but we have to come up with that money through our rates. So that's where maybe I shouldn't have said the Princeton Public Utilities is paying both. I didn't mean to confuse the issue. I I'm always looking at it from a ratepayer perspective. And so it is the ratepayers of Princeton Public Utilities who are paying both.
Is it a ratepayer responsibility, or is it part of your utilities company expense of doing business? Instead of paying taxes, it's a share of the sewer, streets, fire, police, those kinds of things, since there are no taxes collected.
Yes, but then you have to keep in mind all of the activities that a utility is involved with. As we talked about earlier regarding the 5th Street water main relocation, we were going to look at putting in some added fire protection on the north end. We aren't going to do it under that project. We're going to do that on our own. Those costs are never paid for, are not paid for by the city. Those are things that we are doing to help the community. We are the ones that have been maintaining and installing fire hydrants and maintaining that system. So I understand the point you're trying to make, which is, everybody pays taxes for that fire protection. We're actually providing some of that fire protection. And I think if you look at strictly the cash transfer from and limit your view to that, it's not taking into account all of the different things that are going on. When you look at municipal utilities out there, you will find a wide range of what is a cash transfer from a pilot from the municipal utility to the city. And that can vary anywhere from 0 to, I don't even know what the maximum amount is. So it is all over the map. And a lot of it has to do with how and what you look at for in-kind services.
Greg, I have a couple of comments.
Please.
First, it was mentioned that, what better time to do it now that this emergency is in case, but, vice versa, this is something that is proposed to be immediate, and to think that this would not impact the city if something like this was done would be totally inconsistent with exactly that. It's an emergency situation, and the city is, as similar basis, has a lot of assets to protect and a lot of employees that are important to maintain our systems. One of the things that this kind of surprised me that it was on the agenda, in contrast to like the mayor's been very vocal about asking the PUC and informing the PUC that he'd like to discuss increases with the payment in lieu of taxes. This kind of came out of the blue to me. I'm not sure where it came from, but it's a concern of the cities. And, I guess the one thing I would point, a couple other things. Pilots are generally based or pegged to the value of the equipment of the systems that are in place. And that's typically why there's a payment in lieu of taxes based on the value of the equipment, which really seems to have gotten lost in this whole equation, because there is taxes that are paid by some utilities. Not the PUC, it's not required, but there is a rationale for it for a pilot. And then I haven't really looked into it much, but I did find that Delano does have both a franchise fee and they also have a pilot that's in place. Now, I really haven't looked into this or researched it, but I just made a call and found out there's one real nearby, and that is very similar to Princeton that does have both. So I think I don't know how much research you did or what other calls you might have made, but I found one quite easily.
Well, I will have to look into that.
Finish, Keith, if I could address the board. I would just say, this is going to escalate the conflict between the city and the PUC. And I would just say, is this really what you want to do? That's all I have.
Can I go? Can I ask a question, Chairman?
Sure. Who is this?
Brad Schumacher, Mayor of the City of Princeton.
Oh, we don't see your face, sir.
Can't make that happen because I can't get the computer switched around because I was invited to this meeting at 4 minutes before it started. My question comes back down to if anybody goes into Google, just go to Google and go Elk River, Minnesota franchise fees. The city of Elk River has a franchise fee and they pay a payment in lieu of taxes, a pilot program. And it doesn't take a genius just to use your Google in front of your computer that you're on and do that. So I'm not sure how much research that Mr. Butcher did, but even our neighbors in Elk River, who I am trying to mimic their same pilot program, because ultimately what a pilot program does is you pay taxes in lieu for your assets, which are put into what Mr. Barbian said, a value. And so I know that you'll say that you provide some of the fire protection. I give you credit for that. You probably do. But what you do not do is you do not provide any resources for law enforcement. If you look at the city's budget, over 50% of our tax budget is set for law enforcement, the protection of our community's residents, buildings, businesses, and assets. And so ultimately what you would be doing today underneath Resolution 203 is you will be eliminating your payment of taxes for police, fire protection. Yes, you might provide some of it, and we should have a conversation about that moving forward. But again, what you're doing is saying, citizens of Princeton, we were paying $52,500 for years of taxes to contribute to the process. But because of COVID-19, Princeton Public Utility Commission, underneath Resolution 203, decided that we will no longer pay any property taxes to the city of Princeton for any services whatsoever. Yes, we might provide a little bit of relief with help underneath fire protection, but again, you're saying you're not going to pay any property taxes, meaning that the taxpayers of Princeton will have to subsidize Princeton Public Utilities in everything that you do. You are in buildings that are expensive. Those buildings should collect taxes to help offset the burden of law enforcement. Again, I ask, please go back, look at our city's budget. Over 50% is used for police protection. The city of Elk River pays a franchise fee and a pilot. The city of Delano pays a franchise fee and a pilot. I know that because I've been to Delano. I sat down with their general manager. We had this conversation. I'll refrain. I'll let anybody else answer questions. We're all watching.
Keith, could you kind of lay out all the services that the PUC provides to the city free of charge?
Yeah, we've for example, like I said, I mentioned the fire protection, the fire hydrants that we install and maintain. We maintain the street lighting throughout the community. We have provided assistance to the city on call, which includes such things as snow plowing and other assistance whenever required. We've assisted departments on troubleshooting problems at the wastewater treatment plant as needed. I think our staff works very closely with the city staff. We've shared equipment over the years. We've worked together on a lot of these projects and tried to work together on a lot of different things. It's always been, to use the old phrase, just kind of like a gentleman's agreement where we've helped them out when needed, and they've helped us out sometimes when needed. So we've had a very just informal relationship, and we've always tried to do whatever we could to assist the city in those kind of in-kind services.
Would it be fair to say that the ratepayers are shouldering those expenses then through their utility bills?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes at a cost, and that is collected through our rates.
So to say that the ratepayers are being subsidized might be a misrepresentation, possibly.
Yeah, I haven't seen any numbers to show that there is a subsidization occurring to Princeton Public Utilities. I think we've all worked very closely together, and there's back and forth on a lot of stuff. To say that Princeton Public Utilities is being subsidized by the city, I find that hard to believe.
50% of the total tax revenue of the entire city of Princeton goes to law enforcement. What have you done to help protect our city's law enforcement? Do you guys carry guns? Do you arrest people? 50% of every tax dollar spent in this city goes to law enforcement.
Brad, as usual, you're cherry picking one particular item to focus just on law enforcement when you have just stated that the contributions that Princeton Public Utilities has done has been for everything that the city does. Yes, the money hasn't gone directly into the fire service. The police budget. However, by taking on all of the fire protection, where we're spending on the order of $12,000 to $20,000 a year to maintain fire hydrants, takes a significant chunk of budget out of what the fire department would have had to spend anyway. And that money can then be used for law enforcement. This is a very complicated topic with a lot of nuance to it, and to just pick out one line item, it does not fully address what the issue is.
I would agree with that, Keith. It is a very complicated issue, but what I do see is I see this escalating the conflict between the city and the PUC, and I don't think it's good for the PUC, and I don't think it's good for the city.
Well, I would have to say that
Serving the same people.
I'd have to say that I wasn't aware as a ratepayer that I was paying this payment in lieu of taxes, and I was kind of surprised to find out about it because we are a not-for-profit entity, and I think with this, the city. I'm not sure what's happening.
I'm not sure whose phone that is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not mine, but it could be a phone connected to this computer.
Okay.
So I think in this resolution where you're stating that the public has a right to have transparency on how funds are collected by the city and how they are used, which is best accomplished through the existing franchise-free structure. I think the city has the ability to collect whatever funds they deem through the ratepayers. I don't think this is the time for the city to be collecting funds from the ratepayers in the form of taxes when we've got people that, have lost their jobs due to this COVID-19. We've got people that are probably not going to be able to pay all their utility expenses. Also, their utility expenses may rise. More of them are at home. There's a lot more hand washing going on. So I think if the city needs to raise taxes, that they can do it in a more transparent way through that franchise fee.
I guess to put in my 2 cents, I brought this up when the whole franchise fee was put into place, that it's just tax upon tax upon tax on the ratepayers. And I don't agree with that. And we've gone through this discussion in the last probably 2 years that, again, we continue to talk about raising the taxes, but the people, the ratepayers, don't see where the taxes are coming from. They don't realize they're coming from their bill ultimately. They're paying another tax, just in a different form.
Part of it, from my perspective here, part of what the pilot does is create a de facto tax agency that makes us into a tax collector as a utility at a time when we're worried about covering our own expenses and reduced income at the same time, to be paying an extra amount, X, whatever that amount might be, from a business standpoint seems imprudent. My experience with other businesses suggests that you don't buy extra stuff when you don't have the money to cover your own behind, as it were. So, that's just my experience coming to the party here.
Yeah, I
It's-
mean, this came about because of the discussion on the cash reserve policy. And, we're looking at trying to get this to 180 days. And I think, I don't think this is going to get us to 180 days in and of itself. I think we're going to have to look at other ways to reduce expenses. And I'm looking forward to getting down to that business of reducing other expenses, including, outsourcing IT services and other areas that we need to look at. But I think it's going to be a culmination of things. I think, the biggest thing with this pilot is it is a hidden tax that, grandma ratepayer and now laid off ratepayer probably doesn't understand that they're paying.
Indeed. Any other further comments? Hearing no further discussion, do I have a motion to accept this proposal, this resolution? I don't have a motion. I'd like to make a recommendation that we do a little further research and address this at April's meeting. Tim, I didn't know raising your hand worked like that.
Yeah, I'll get a wrecked shoulder. Question, real quick. Will the mayor please unmute? Will Administrator Barbian unmute? Please. The mayor's not listening. Thanks, Mayor.
Unmute means I can hear you, I can't talk.
Okay. All right, I have a question for the mayor and the city council liaison. In the fall of 2018, you both campaigned on the PUC as an election issue. Is what is going on right now a continuation of this as a political issue, yes or no?
Mayor goes first then. No motion has been made. This is a conversation of discussion. And at this point, this is a discussion. This is not a motion. This isn't a change in status. Period.
I guess I don't see that as an answer. I think he asked you a question.
I did.
I just answered the question. Right now, you are making a discussion. You have not made a motion. Nobody made a first. Nobody made a second. This isn't at public discussion. This is literally just a conversation with a piece of paper in front of you that's not signed.
Well, then I would like to make a motion that we adopt resolution 20-03.
Both motions have been made. Is there a second?
Reluctantly, I do second it only because of the fact I think there needs to be way more transparency in how the ratepayers are being taxed and where the money is going. The fact that they don't realize in their bill, they're paying more taxes, and in a franchise fee, paying more taxes.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor? Say aye.
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 I
All those opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion is carried. Any further discussion? 8F.
What I would like to share is the city's letter regarding the appointment. And Jenny, my deepest apologies. I did not mean to misspell your name. That was not intentional. So regarding the appointment of Councilor Gerald onto Public Utilities Commission, that letter is in front of you. So you'll see that it states that the Princeton City Council accepted Public Utilities Commissioner Mindy Cirque's resignation at the February 6th study session. After some discussion, Mayor Schumacher moved to appoint Public Utilities Liaison Jenny Gerald to finish Cirque's term, which will end 12/31/2020. And Jeff seconded the motion. After more discussion, it carried 3-2 with Schumacher, Reynolds, and Gerald in favor, and Zimmer and Edmonds opposed. I had been trying to work with the city on the official notification that I get regarding commission appointments, because I do like to have things for the official record and have those be clear and in their direction towards this commission as it relates to the duties of the city council. I have reached out because I was concerned that this letter, although it does say to finish Cirque's term, which will end 12/31/2020, it does not include a start date. So I guess what I would like, just to make sure that the record is clear and complete, is to have a letter from the city stating that start date. I think the assumption that everybody has is that Jenny's start date is April 1st. But I would like to have that as part of the official record. So
Not a
Jenny, I
problem.
was wondering if you would.
Ask and you'll receive. You'll get it.
Okay, I have asked multiple times and I haven't received it. So that's why I'm having to bring it up now, because April 1st is next week and I would like to have something in the official record. So yeah, if you can get me that, I would appreciate it. So that's all I have to say on that then. If I can get that letter with the start date, then I think we are good in terms of our,
Bob,
in terms of
Bob,
commission appointment.
Forgive me, Bob, I didn't hear what you said.
He
I saw
wants
your
a
face
letter
pop
with
up.
the start date. He'll get something that says a start date for the 1st.
Good, thank you very much. And G, Resolution 2002.
This is the resolution authorizing the services of Minuteman Press. Since Mindy is a commissioner, she abstains from this adoption. These are for miscellaneous printing costs, as well as a plaque that we have made up for an event that will be forthcoming. So since Dan was absent last month, we typically do this on a monthly basis. And so we're covering both January and February. I do apologize. The packet had a typo in it. So what you see on your screen is the correct one, which shows the January amount, the February amount with the total for the 2 months together. That's what was missing from what was in your packet. So this is, like I said, this has just been our normal course for when it involves a commissioner, just to make sure that everything is transparent.
Okay. I'll make the motion to pay Minuteman Press for the services described in this resolution.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show that Dan and I both said aye there, and the motion is carried.
And that Mindy abstained from that. We'll also make sure it's in the minutes.
Yep. And then, as noted at the beginning of today's meeting, we added a letter 8H. Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to make any comments or wanted to bring anything up, this is your time.
Well, thank you for inviting me to the meeting, even if it was 5 minutes before the meeting started. I do appreciate that. I was very clear at our city council meeting that I wanted to be on the agenda and have a conversation. I didn't think that the conversation would end the way that it is today. I am extremely disappointed by the simple fact that the Princeton Public Utility Commission in its entirety believes that they can, in a time of crisis of COVID-19, which is a national security issue, that you can opt out from paying your property taxes or property taxes in lieu of, when it has been duly noted that Elk River Public Utilities, Delano Public Utilities pays a franchise fee and pays a tax in lieu of. And that is because those cities operate just like ours do. The mass majority of your budget in a city, as mayor, I can tell you, is law enforcement. It's the protection of the people, the businesses, and the assets of our community. For Princeton Public Utilities in a time of crisis to say we're no longer going to help pay for law enforcement is disturbing. I am very disappointed in you. And I think that the city council will have another conversation about this on Thursday evening. But I do appreciate being invited. And like I said, Mr. Butcher will also be invited to our Thursday meeting. I will make sure that he has a Zoom request before 4 minutes before the meeting starts. And the same with you, Mr. Hanson. I'll make sure that you have a Zoom request 4 minutes before the meeting starts. Thank you.
Thanks. Just to be clear, I want to make a point here. The mayor asked to be put on the agenda after the last city council meeting. I said I'd be happy to. I asked him to send me an email indicating what he'd like to discuss, and I would put him on the agenda. I never received an email from the mayor, although I took it upon myself to handwrite my email address so he wouldn't even have to look that up. So there's obviously a misunderstanding. I'm sorry that that happened, but I will make sure that as a matter of standard practice, the mayor is on our agenda. Is there anything else? Any further discussion today?
Nope.
In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn at 2:46 PM.
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. 3-0.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I am